In December 2008, the financial world was rocked by a scandal of unprecedented scale. Bernard "Bernie" Madoff, once celebrated as a Wall Street genius, was exposed as the architect of the largest Ponzi scheme in history, defrauding investors of approximately $65 billion. This staggering sum, equivalent to the GDP of a small nation, was stolen not from a country, but from thousands of trusting individuals, charities, and institutions. The Madoff scandal is not just a story of financial crime. It is a cautionary tale about trust, greed, and the fragility of unchecked systems. The rise of Bernie Madoff. Bernard Lawrence Madoff was born on April 29, 1938, in Queens, New York, to a middle-class Jewish family. Far from the silver spoon narrative often associated with Wall Street titans, Madoff's early life was modest. He attended Far Rockaway High School and later Hofstra University, where he earned a degree in political science in 1960. To fund his education, Madoff worked as a lifeguard and sprinkler installer, reportedly saving $5,000 from these jobs. This modest sum became the seed money for Bernard L. Madoff Investment Securities, LLC, the firm he founded in 1960 at the age of 22. Madoff's early business focused on trading penny stocks, a niche market at the time. His firm leveraged technology, becoming one of the first to use computers for trading, which gave it an edge in efficiency. By the 1980s, Madoff's firm was a respected player in the financial industry, handling a significant portion of trading volume on the New York Stock Exchange. He also played a key role in developing the NASDAQ, serving as its chairman in the early 1990s. To the outside world, Madoff was a pioneer, a man who had climbed from modest roots to the pinnacle of Wall Street. Building a reputation. Madoff's reputation as a financial wizard grew not through flashy marketing, but through consistent performance. His investment advisory business, which operated separately from his legitimate market-making firm, promised steady returns of 10 to 12% annually, regardless of market conditions. This consistency was unheard of in the volatile world of investing, where market crashes, recessions, and bear markets were inevitable. Clients flocked to Madoff, drawn by the allure of stable, predictable gains. Madoff cultivated an aura of exclusivity. His fund wasn't open to just anyone. Investors had to be invited, often through personal connections or elite social networks. This exclusivity created a sense of privilege, as if being allowed to invest with Madoff was a mark of status. High-profile clients, including celebrities, hedge funds, universities, and charities, entrusted him with their wealth. The promise of steady returns, combined with Madoff's sterling reputation, silenced skepticism. Why question a man who seemed to have cracked the code to financial success? The mechanics of the Ponzi scheme. At the heart of Madoff's empire was a lie. There were no investments, no trades, no profits. His operation was a classic Ponzi scheme, a fraudulent system where returns paid to earlier investors come from the capital of newer investors. Madoff's scheme was simple in concept, but staggering in scale. He took money from new clients and used it to pay returns to existing ones, creating the illusion of a thriving investment fund. The actual investments, however, were non-existent. Madoff fabricated account statements, trade confirmations, and financial reports to maintain the facade. Madoff claimed to use a strategy called the split strike conversion, which supposedly involved buying a basket of stocks and hedging with options to minimize risk. This strategy was plausible enough to deflect scrutiny, but it was a fiction. No trades were executed and no stocks were purchased. Instead, Madoff's team generated fake documents, often using outdated software to create statements that mimic legitimate financial reports. The consistency of the returns, never too high to seem reckless, never too low to raise concern, was the key to keeping investors complacent. The power of trust. Madoff's scheme thrived on trust. Investors, dazzled by the steady returns reflected in their monthly statements, rarely asked questions. The psychological power of seeing consistent gains dulled their curiosity. Madoff also exploited social networks, particularly within affluent Jewish communities in New York, Florida, and beyond. He leveraged feeder funds, hedge funds that funneled client money to his firm, expanding his reach without direct solicitation. These feeder funds, managed by trusted figures in the financial world, lent Madoff an additional layer of legitimacy. Regulators, too, failed to uncover the fraud. The Securities and Exchange Commission, SEC, investigated Madoff's firm multiple times between 1992 and 2008, but found nothing amiss. Whistleblowers, most notably financial analyst Harry Markopolos, raised red flags as early as 1999, pointing out that Madoff's returns were mathematically impossible. Markopolos submitted detailed reports to the SEC, but the agency's lack of resources, expertise, and follow-through allowed the scheme to continue unchecked. Madoff's reputation as a Wall Street luminary shielded him from serious scrutiny. The collapse. The global financial crisis of 2008 was the catalyst that brought Madoff's house of cards tumbling down. As markets plummeted, investors panicked and sought to withdraw their funds. Madoff's firm faced redemption requests totaling $7 billion, a sum he could not produce because the money didn't exist. His Ponzi scheme, like all such schemes, relied on a steady inflow of new capital to pay returns. When the financial crisis dried up new investments and triggered mass withdrawals, the scheme unraveled. On December 10, 2008, Madoff confessed to his sons, Mark and Andrew, that his investment business was one big lie. Shocked, they reported him to the authorities. The next day, December 11, 2008, Madoff was arrested at his $7 million Manhattan penthouse. The news sent shockwaves through the financial world. The man who had been a symbol of success was revealed as a fraud who had stolen billions from his clients. The scale of the fraud. The numbers were staggering. Madoff's scheme defrauded an estimated 37,000 investors across 136 countries, with losses totaling $65 billion, including fabricated gains. The actual cash losses money investors had deposited were estimated at $20 billion. Victims included individuals, families, pension funds, universities, and charities. Some lost their life savings, others their retirement funds. Charities such as the JHCT Foundation and the Chase Family Foundation were forced to shut down, unable to fulfill their missions. The ripple effects were profound, destroying livelihoods and communities. Legal consequences. In March 2009, Madoff pleaded guilty to 11 federal felonies, including securities fraud, wire fraud, and money laundering. He claimed to have acted alone, a statement met with widespread skepticism. While some employees were later convicted for their roles, the extent of complicity remains debated. On June 29, 2009, Madoff was sentenced to 150 years in prison, a symbolic gesture given his age. The judge described his crimes as extraordinarily evil, noting their devastating impact on victims. A court-appointed trustee, Irving Picard, was tasked with recovering funds for victims. By 2025, Picard's efforts had recovered over $14 billion, primarily from net winners who had withdrawn more than they invested. These funds were redistributed to net losers, but many victims recovered only a fraction of their losses. The legal battles continue, with lawsuits against feeder funds and financial institutions that enabled Madoff's scheme. Personal toll. The scandal destroyed Madoff's family. His wife, Ruth, who had been his partner since high school, faced public vilification, though she was never charged with wrongdoing. Their eldest son, Mark, died by suicide on December 11, 2010, the second anniversary of his father's arrest. Andrew, their younger son, died of lymphoma in 2014, attributing his illness's recurrence to the stress of the scandal. Madoff himself died in prison on April 14, 2021, at the age of 82 after battling kidney disease. Societal impact. The Madoff scandal exposed deep flaws in the financial system. It highlighted the SEC's failures in oversight and the dangers of unchecked trust in financial institutions. It also underscored the vulnerability of investors, even sophisticated ones, to charismatic fraudsters. The scandal prompted reforms, including increased scrutiny of hedge funds and better protections for whistleblowers, but questions remain about whether the system is truly safe from similar schemes. Lessons learned. The danger of too good to be true. The Madoff scandal is a stark reminder that if something seems too good to be true, it probably is. His consistent returns defied market realities, yet few questioned them. Investors must exercise due diligence, verifying claims and understanding where their money is going. Blind trust, especially in exclusive or prestigious opportunities, can lead to ruin. The importance of regulation. The SEC's failure to act on warnings about Madoff revealed systemic weaknesses in financial regulation. Stronger oversight, better training for regulators, in a culture that takes whistleblower complaints seriously, are essential to preventing future frauds. Investors should also demand transparency from financial advisors and funds. The human cost of greed. Madoff's greed didn't just steal money, it stole trust, security, and lives. The emotional toll on victims, many of whom lost everything, cannot be overstated. Some faced homelessness, others took their own lives. The scandal serves as a warning about the consequences of prioritizing profit over ethics. Madoff's legacy. Was Bernie Madoff a criminal mastermind or a greedy opportunist? He was likely both. His ability to deceive regulators, investors, and even his own family for decades suggests a chilling level of cunning. Yet his reliance on a simple Ponzi scheme, sustained by hubris and lax oversight, reveals a man who exploited trust rather than outsmarted the system. His stationery may have been pristine, his office polished, but his empire was built on lies. The Madoff scandal remains a defining moment in financial history, a cautionary tale about the dangers of unchecked ambition and blind faith. It reminds us to question, to verify, and to prioritize integrity over promises of easy wealth. As the world continues to grapple with financial complexity, Madoff's story is a sobering call to vigilance. If you found this deep dive into the Bernie Madoff scandal compelling, let us know your thoughts in the comments below. For more stories about money, crime, and the human cost of corruption, delivered with a touch of insight and humor, be sure to like and subscribe. Stay curious, stay skeptical, and we'll see you in the next story.